Okay. So I got Twitch. I'll just get Kick going, and I'll just stop with that. Kick is supposed to be like this huge platform for videos and stuff like that, and it is huge for gaming. But I know a lot of people are. Go ahead.
What's it called?
Kick.
No, I've never heard of it.
String key. Thank you. All right. Yeah, as soon as I get this stream key loaded, then we'll start up. Okay, cool. So I'm going to start out basically kind of asking you some questions, and we'll just go from there. Basically, like, you know, what got you into going online, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
If you're already a minion and you would like to tithe, please hit like. If you would like to become a minion, please hit follow. If you would like to confess, please do so in the comments. And if you would like to evangelize, please share. Today we're talking about bullying. And my guest here is Shannon Cornthwaite, which is an amazing individual that I met on TikTok, and who has actually been very, very helpful to me. He's not aware of this, but he's just said a few things here and there offhandedly when we've conversed. I lost my son in October, and he's just been very, very helpful. More than anything, he's just been there. He's just been there, and that's been a really big thing. And you know, when it comes to bullying, I think that's one key factor. When I was young, I'm autistic, I didn't feel like anyone was there for me. I felt that the bullies were bullying me, and that the parents, the school faculty, or whatever, because I was awkward and weird, because I was autistic, they automatically assumed it was my fault. And therefore, there we go. All right, I just dropped Twitch. Anyway, Shannon, I'd like to ask you. Now we're just on YouTube and TikTok because my connection was being weird. What got you? You do videos on bullying. You do a lot of videos on bullying, and I found them extremely helpful. But more than anything, it's really brought my attention back to it, because I haven't been bullied in a few years, but it's been because I'm out of the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
And the most severe bullying I've experienced actually was in the workforce, not at school, to a lot of extent, because of how it impacted me psychologically, because I had a family support. And, you know, you've got to endure a lot of things just to get that paycheck. And now that I'm not working anymore, and after I found out I was autistic, I just don't tolerate it anymore. I do not tolerate uncomfortable situations and so forth. But what is it that got you into talking about bullying?
I was severely bullied in school. I was bullied by students. I was bullied by teachers, by administration. There was a time when I went to work on a school project at a classmate's house with this classmate and another kid. And we got done early, went to his backyard to play a little bit. And and the two of them ganged up on me. They tied me up and put me on this little play school slide.
Oh my
And
word.
then the kid who lived there, can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay. The kid who lived there, he came charging at me full force, knocked me to the ground.
I'm getting an echo now for some reason.
Is that better?
Nope. It just started echoing when you said that for some reason.
Huh.
Anyway, go ahead.
Okay.
Sounds good now.
Broke my collarbone to where it was like this.
Oh, geez.
And we didn't know it at the time, though. All I knew was it hurt a lot in my shoulder area. I couldn't move. I was crying, basically screaming in pain. And the dad came out, wondered what was going on. He tried to help me up, but every movement, it just shot waves of pain through me. In pain, and the dad came. He was just like, "Well, if you're not gonna help get up, there's nothing I can do. So we're gonna go inside, and you can join us when you're ready."
Oh.
I laid out there for probably about half an hour until this all went numb. And then I was finally able to pull myself to my feet. I was in 6th grade at this time. And
now you strike me as a big guy. Were you a big guy at that time?
At that time, I was around 5'3".
I mean, did you have a lot of weight on you, or were you a skinny kid, or?
Yeah, I was fat. I was short and chubby at the time. Now I'm like 6'3", about 300 pounds.
Okay.
Even amount of muscle and fat. Fat's mostly in my stomach, muscles everywhere else. But I went inside. I told him I was ready to go home because he was going to give me a ride home because my mom was at work. They took me home, dropped me off. I went inside. I sat down on the floor in front of our couch because I couldn't actually lay or sit into the couch because any reclining backwards or anything, it just waves of pain. And it was about an hour or so until my mom would get home from work. And so I set a pillow up against the couch. I sat down on the floor, just holding my arm, just in almost complete silence. I didn't turn the TV on or anything, just crying because of the severe pain. And so finally, when my mom got home, she asked me what was wrong. I told her what had happened. She took me to the ER. They found out that my collarbone was broken. They called it a hairline fracture, even though it was like this.
Oh, geez.
And you could actually see it through the skin.
Yeah, that's not a hairline. That's a open fracture. Well, yeah. Actually closed fracture.
She called the kid's dad, cussing him out and everything. Next day, I guess he felt bad because he brought me a McDonald's, which apparently he was trying to keep from being sued or whatever. And then when I returned to school, we had this thing where each week one of us would take attendance and stuff to the office. It was supposed to be like we got to do that, we got to leave class and do that. And it was supposed to be my week to do that. And the teacher skipped right over me. I was like, hey, wait a minute. This is my week to do that. And she was like, no, your arm is in a sling. I don't want anything happening to you out in the hall and you blaming me in the school.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
In 5th grade, I had a psych evaluation done, and by the school psychologist. And the school psychologist, as well as my teachers and the administration, all said I was to blame for me being bullied.
Absolutely, absolutely. I found I begin to actually resent adults,
Oh
and
yeah,
unfortunately, I learned very young not to trust adults or anyone. I learned to be extremely distrustful, and I think there's a lot of autistic. I think most autistics are, and I'm not saying paranoid by any means. I'm saying it's life experiences. You
yeah.
know, if you put yourself in certain situations, like I used to tell my son, um, if you go to the bar, fine and dandy, but if you get beat up, you put yourself in the bar. Yeah, I'm not saying that it's his fault for being there or for doing anything wrong, but a lot of times you realize that you get yourself in certain situations, it could go bad.
Oh yeah.
So I'm trying to think. Um,
And I found out um, once MySpace became a thing and Facebook became a thing, the kid who broke my collarbone, he's actually a Catholic priest now.
well, things may not have changed any. I do have one question for you because you talk about this a lot. Now, I did quite a bit of review of different opinions and so forth, different perspectives on bullying. And there's one fellow that mentioned something that really did strike me. And that's in your school setting. Um, During school hours and on school property, quote, there's accountability. However, if the kid steps off the curb or it happens to be after school hours, well, then it's okay. They can do
Mhm.
whatever they want to, after school or whatever.
Unless it's for school related activity.
Right. And so what he was talking about is he said when it comes to bullying, it should extend beyond
Mm-hmm.
because the bullies know that, okay, maybe at your school bus stop, they might count it. But once you walk away from that bus stop, 10 paces, you're just out in the world.
The During junior high, I lived out in the country. I lived on a farm. Um, but during junior high, I would walk. Our junior high and high school were in the same building, just different sizes of the building. And I would walk to the district library after school because I volunteered for their after school program, helping kids learn how to read and stuff like that. It's called the Navigator program. And my bullies would catch me as I was walking to the library, and they would just beat the shit out of me. They would chase after me on their bikes. They would beat me with sticks. They would spit on me, kick me. Um, One day, my mom picked me up from school and saw a police officer that I knew real well because I was friends with his son in elementary school. And she told him that, these kids were bullying me and everything. And he could talk to them about it. And they tried putting the blame on me, saying that I started it, I instigated it and everything. And there was nothing he could do about it because as my word against theirs. And then my mom looked at me and she said, "You better not be starting it." And all just I was no longer the victim. I was now the perpetrator. And that's really where it goes for me is, I was bullied very severely through elementary and junior high, a little bit in high school, but not as bad because by then I had finally just given up. I went goth. I stopped caring. I was very antisocial. Um, there were times when I'd actually get up in the mornings and drink before I went to school.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I slept through classes. I didn't turn in my schoolwork. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just stopped caring. And um, when I moved to this new school district, one of the first things I did was um, I got on the radar of the biggest, meanest guy in the school, which he was a junior at the time, but he looked like Vin Diesel with hair.
Oh, geez.
Literally,
Mm-hmm.
his face looked exactly like
Mm-hmm.
Vin Diesel, and he was muscles, and not even the seniors would mess with him. Well, I got on his radar, and he started screwing with me, and I challenged him to a fight. I told him, hey, meet me here after school on this day. And so it was the talk of the school for the longest time. Um, I had seniors who offered me a ride to the fight because otherwise I would have had to wait for the school bus. And pretty much the majority of the school showed up. And even though I didn't throw a single punch in that fight, the fact that I actually stood there and I took the beating. I didn't wimp out,
Mm-hmm.
He punched me once, and I felt like, you ever watched The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air?
Yeah.
When Uncle Phil throws Jazz out of the house?
No, I don't remember.
Oh, I felt like Jazz flying through the air,
Oh,
going
jeez.
through these bushes when he punched me. And I landed on the ground, and I was in pain, but I wasn't letting him know that I was in pain.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as he comes walking through these bushes after me, I sit up like the Undertaker from WWE.
Mm-hmm.
And I turn and I look at him. And about that time, we hear sirens. And turns out it is an ambulance going down the highway. But we didn't know that at the time. We thought someone had called the police on us. Everyone scattered. And at that time, I was like, saved by the fucking bell, and I just fell backwards. And I went home and I licked my wounds, Didn't have a single problem with him after that because I stood up to him. Even though I didn't throw a single punch and got my ass handed to me,
Mm-hmm.
it was because I was the only one who ever actually stood up to him.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually showed me a lot of respect after that.
I had a few really big dudes. I'm talking big dudes, and this happened more than once where some big guy. I'm talking like 6 foot, two something, 100 pounds. I'm gonna kick your, and I looked at him and said, "Yep, probably, but I'm gonna give you my best." And they back down every single time. And I was serious because I figured, okay, I'm not getting away from this dude. you know, um, but that's something that we really shouldn't have to face. In junior high, I had several bullies, but the thing is I would end up in the principal's office, and I got to the point that I knew not to do or say anything, particularly to the adults, because like one time, I was forced to hold hands with the dude who fucking beat me up because we needed to get along. And that's one thing that neurotypicals don't understand. They do not understand that people will go after you just because you are different, just because you are disabled, just because you are autistic.
Yeah.
If they don't understand you, they fear you. And that fear turns into aggression.
Yeah. And even if you're not diagnosed, like me,
Mm-hmm.
I've never officially been diagnosed. In fact, I just went to get my assessment a couple months ago. I've got to pay the other half before I can actually sit down with them and find out the results and everything, which I'll be doing here in the next couple weeks. But neurotypicals know you're different. They can't pinpoint it.
Mm-hmm.
There's just something about you they don't like, they don't understand, and so they attack you. They attack what they don't understand. And for the longest time, I always asked myself why. What was wrong with me that made all these people attack me verbally, physically, emotionally? Go out of their way and just destroy me, And I can't tell you how many times I cried myself to sleep at night. Why people didn't show up to my birthday parties. Um, we'd order all these pizzas, and I'd be sitting there at home watching the door, and nobody would show up. Um, Same thing happened with my dad. I would sit there waiting for him on the weekends that he was supposed to have me, and he wouldn't show up. And then I'd get a call several hours later saying, "Hey, sorry, bud. I worked hard this week, and I'm just exhausted. I'm not going to make it." That kind of bullshit. Um, but I always wondered what was wrong with me to make all these people bully me like this and abandon me. And it wasn't until I started watching, well, before that, I started to kind of suspect that I might be autistic. Um, just from different things I had seen on TV and read in books and stuff. Um, but I had asked my wife about it, and she said she didn't think I was, and that I might just be looking for shadows or whatever. And it wasn't until I got into when I returned to school and got into psychology, and then I started watching TikTok and hearing all these other people's stories, shared traits, um, and watching them with my wife. And we agree, hey, no, there is something more. Um, and so I looked into it even more. I started watching videos, not just TikTok videos, but YouTube, from doctors, from psychologists, from counselors, and everything. Just consuming as much information on autism and neurodivergence as I could, and researching in articles and the DSM and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then I finally felt like I had found why people didn't like me.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to call this. I'm going to interrupt you real quick. I'm going to call this person Ninja. This is going back to what you said. They don't like the that we're direct and honest, and I think that might be one of those things in our communication differences that they like you said, they cannot identify it, but something is different. And even me looking back, I was not diagnosed until I was 50. And but looking back, I realized that there's a lot of people that I knew were different. I knew were different, and I'm like, that dude's different. And now I realize, yeah, they were autistic. I even saw it. I didn't recognize it. I didn't know what it was, but I definitely saw that this person's different from these other people, and I know I strike people that way. I know that people definitely get that vibe from me, and it's almost instantaneous. Now, what's interesting for me is when I first meet people, I either click with them. I mean, it sounds, I guess it's normal for everybody, but I either really click with them really well, and that's only like 1 in 100 people, or they just kind of ignore me pretty much. My wife just had a birthday, her 50th birthday. We went out to a bar. She rented it out, and there was about 50 some odd people there. And I thought that was wonderful, and I thought it was great. I appreciate it. It made me a little sad though, because on my 50th, or if I was to have a birthday today, there literally wouldn't be anybody to show up, except for my wife and my stepfather or my father-in-law kind of thing. The really immediate family, because I just don't have those friends. Now I do have friends online,
Yeah.
but those friends are pretty much all on the spectrum.
And I think that's a common thing with us is a lot of our friends are online because of things like TikTok and YouTube, where we share our interests and we meet people who we have things in common with. But there's no one around us, especially living in a small town like I do. There's no one like us in the area
Mm-hmm.
to really click with. And I feel the same way as you. I go to these party. I've gone to these birthday parties and everything, and seen so many people show up and all this, and then I think about my own birthday parties, my own birthdays, and how few people, if any, have actually showed up,
Mm-hmm.
um, and have wondered what was wrong with me. I mean, even on holidays, family gatherings, I'll invite family members to my house, and they won't show up. My dad being one of them. I've talked about this ad nauseum on my channel. You know, the this was the tipping point for me with my relationship or lack thereof with my father. You know, the last time I talked to him was Thanksgiving a couple of years ago. I had contacted him almost a month in advance, asking him about his Thanksgiving plans, and he was like, "Oh, I have to see what." I'm not gonna say her name, but I have to see what my sister's doing. Um, See if she's doing anything and all this. I'm like, wait a minute. If no one else has asked you to join them, then I'm the first person to ask you, why do you have to see what other people are doing? Why can't you just give me an answer now? And he's like, just giving me excuse after excuse. Oh, you live too far. I can't drive at night. I'm like, okay, it's about 45-minute drive between my house and yours. We have dinner early, so you can be back home before the sun even starts to go down. And he's just giving me excuse after excuse, and I'm like, you know what? I rescind the request. You just go do what you want on Thanksgiving. I've tried inviting you multiple years, and every year it's the same thing. And then he throws in my face that it's because I changed my last name, and that I no longer share his last name, and how upset that made him and everything. And it's like, it didn't upset you my entire life when you were gone. You know, I only saw you once or twice a year, you know. It didn't upset you every time I went to the hospital for my asthma or for bullying because I either had a concussion or a broken bone. You never showed up. You never called me to see how I was, you know. What's it matter if I change my last name?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it reminds me of that song, "Father of Mine" by Everclear. Everclear. My daddy gave me a name, and then he walked away.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and one of my favorite memories was my great grandmother's last birthday. We threw her a surprise birthday party in the basement of the church, and so many people showed up, and we got it on video. My wife actually, one year for my birthday, sent the VHS tape away to get it converted to DVD for me, and she surprised me with it, and I actually broke down in tears because I hadn't seen it in forever. And that birthday of my great grandma's has always been the standard that I have wanted. You know, I've always wanted a surprise birthday party or a surprise party of some kind because of all the negative birthdays that I've had in the past. All the years when people I thought were friends never showed up, or years when my dad wouldn't show up or call me or anything. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that a lot of us on the spectrum have in common that they get wrong, where one of the diagnostic criteria is that a lack of social I'm having a brain fart.
Difficulties with social interaction.
Or not wanting social interaction, mm-hmm. or whatever. And it's not that we don't want it. It's not that we don't desire it and strive for it. It's that society doesn't want us. And we've gotten used to that.
And I think also it's the way that we interact. Now I've noticed that even with how we interact with each other in respect to, for instance, my daughter and my son, and my mother even. My mother, sometimes it could go a year without hearing from her, and she just disappear. My daughter and I may not talk for months, 6 months at a time. Now, when we're together, we love each other like you wouldn't believe. We still love each other. Don't get me wrong. But the thing is I think a lot of it has to do with time blindness and the fact that, and this is a weird thing for me. Like, I hope I can call you a friend at this point in time.
Yeah.
So if we're friends and we don't talk now for whatever, for 5 years or whatever, it doesn't make any difference to me. That friendship level is still there, but with neurotypical people, those friendships, ebb and flow. Like they may be friends, and then later on, they grow apart or whatever. But I think for autistic people, it's very different because I think that once we've developed that kind of bond with a friendship, that wherever that level goes up to, and I don't think it ever stops. You
No.
know, and because it's kind of strange because, like, if I didn't see you for, let's say, 10 years, whatever our relationship was when we left, to me, is exactly where it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Is.
It's
Not,
like,
not was. Is.
right. It's like a couple of years back, uh, I I grew up with these three friends from high school. We called ourselves the Four Horsemen, because we were always together. One of them follows me on TikTok. He rarely comments or whatever, but he follows me. We kind of got back in contact a few months back, and have talked here and there. But two of them were groomsmen. One was my best man, and one was a groomsman when I got married. And I hadn't talked to the groomsmen since, maybe occasionally since I had gotten married, which was about 14 years ago. But it's very every once in a while, maybe once a year or something like that, if that. And then I hadn't talked to him for a couple of years, and I found out his daughter had passed away.
Mm.
And even though I didn't know his daughter, I was the only one from this friend group who showed up to the funeral and visitation.
Mm.
And I sat by him, I kind of rubbed his shoulders, gave him a hug and all this when I first arrived, and just sat with him the entire time. And I think that has to do with autistic loyalty.
Mm-hmm.
We feel loyal to a fault with those that we really connect with.
Mm-hmm.
Even to some people that we don't connect with.
Mm-hmm.
If you're nice to us, we feel loyal to you.
And that even goes over into work. I've noticed that a lot of times, and I'm not the only one that has experienced this. When I get to a job, I want to do the very best I can.
Mm-hmm.
And I become an overachiever, and that starts intimidating my managers and so forth. And it's because of that loyalty. I figure I'm getting paid for these people. This is I owe them my best. I feel I owe them that. It's not that I owe, if I was working for McDonald's, I don't owe McDonald's Corp anything, but these people that I'm working with, I owe them that it's my responsibility to be there and to do what I'm supposed to do for my people around me.
And I would do that too until I'd start getting taken advantage of, start being overlooked, start being expected to go and be above and beyond all this time, expected to show up for other people and nobody showing up for me. And then I would dial it back, and then I would end up getting called into the office and told, you did really well when you first started, and you were on the path to be having my job someday, and now what happened?
You took advantage of me.
Exactly.
I definitely have experienced that at work, and that also, once again, that's a huge difference in attitude when we have that extreme, I guess, loyalty to that work, I think it also intimidates everybody else
Hmm.
because they're not. They don't care. They want that paycheck. They want to go home. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but the difference in attitude really does set us apart.
Hmm.
And one thing that I found out was that since I was an overachiever, I would start getting the shit jobs because the manager's like, if I go ask Tom, he's just going to complain. Lucy's, oh my God, Lucy's just going to go crazy. If I go ask Dave, he'll just get done, and I don't have to. I don't have to go back and supervise him. I don't have to check behind him. He works well independently. We also work well independently, very well independently,
Yeah.
and that again separates us from the other employees. But for me, I like my last real serious job was at a garbage company. They had a yearly Christmas party, and I never went to it ever. I only knew four people's names there. There was about 25 people that worked there. And it was like the mechanic and a couple of the other guys that happened to do my route sometimes, or I'd help them. Other than that, I didn't even know their names.
Yeah. By the way, I've got the TikTok chat brought up on my phone in front of me. Alpha Devil said, after my divorce and my mom passing in the same 30 days, my work suffered and then I got fired. And I find that common among neurotypical workplaces. There's really, they don't care. Bosses
Mm-mm.
don't care. Other employees don't care. Um, you could die tomorrow and they'd replace you like that.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care what you're going through.
Nah, nah.
I was a forklift operator for Caterpillar through G&D Integrated before I started my lawn care business. And I came in early one morning, working overtime, and I was putting these bins up on the racks. And the rack said uh, 4 bins could fit there as a max load. I put 4 bins up there, and the guys are telling me, no, you can't put those up there. Only 3 go there. I'm like, well, it says max load 4. I took that literally, literal thinking.
You're right.
And I went to go dump the dumpster, and I get radio, Shannon, come back to Robert area boy building right now. Drop whatever you're doing. Um, but there's a rule: you can't just drop what you the garbage bins and leave them where they are. Otherwise, you're going to get written up.
Mm-hmm.
So I was caught between a rock and a hard place on that. And you have to go backwards when you're carrying a load.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a completely different building dumping it, and so I ignored the whole drop whatever you're doing part,
Mm-hmm.
and I just went in reverse all the way back to boy building Robert area, which is what we called it. They have B building, C
Mm-hmm.
building stuff, um, and I get about halfway there. I get in the building, and he's like, "Shannon, where are you? Drop what you're doing and get back here now." I'm like, "I'm on my way. I'll be right there." I couldn't drop what I was doing because
Mm-hmm.
there was a rule from Caterpillar
Mm-hmm.
for that. And I get there, he sees the garbage can on my forks. He's like, "I told you to drop what you were doing and get back here." I was like, I couldn't just leave this garbage can where it was.
Right.
Otherwise, I would have gotten rid of it and probably walked out the door.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, "Why did you put 4 on here when these guys were telling you only 3 would fit?" I said, "Well, look right there. It says max load 4 bins right there. That sign there saved my ass. I didn't get
Mm-hmm.
written up for it." But they had 2 forklift operators, one holding the stuff while the other one was pulling that fourth one back out because I had them wedged in there pretty tight. Everyone was kind of stunned that I was able to do that. But the literal thinking, it says max load 4. I was going to get every ounce of that max load out of it, and clear my floor. But apparently that wasn't the right thing to do. So.
I had a catch 22 also. I had a lieutenant that, and there was a captain that he was literally trying to get me murdered. What he was a power and control guy, and I resisted because I'm PDA, so I didn't put up with his power and control crap. Well, so he started telling inmates, or telling me to go do things to inmates, like take their shit or whatever that I wasn't supposed to piss them off. And he wouldn't do it with anyone else. And I pointed that out to him, and it went on and on and on. And one day I was talking with my lieutenant, and I says, I need a transfer. I need to get out of here. Why? Because of Captain Doubleday. Guy Doubleday. Yes, I am calling you out. I'm not doxing him, but I am telling you a name. He got to harassing me so much that I had to leave. And so she asked me, she's like, what is going on? Why don't you why do you have to leave? What's and I was like, and she kept on pushing me and pushing me and pushing me. She's like, why is why is what he's doing bothering you, whatever. And finally I was like, because he is an idiot. Okay, now I was using the word, I wasn't name calling. An idiot is one incapable of rational thought. Mm-hmm. And that's what I was saying. He's not capable of rational thought. Well, then she wrote me up. And when I went to the hearing, I was like, she asked me a question. If I did not answer her question, that would be insubordination. So now you're trying to dock me for insubordination because I answered her question. She's the one who answered it. Well, they ended up not doing anything, but it's that kind of thing. So I want to go back to the school thing. Do you think it is feasible to extend, so to speak, punishments or whatever for when kids are in the same school district and it is after school? And if so, I mean, the question would be, how far do you extend that to? Do you extend that to weekends when they're playing in each other's yards, or but that could be the case because these kids are going to interact at school. So I'm really, I am kind of actually liking that idea because all it is accountability. Okay, what if you didn't have that rule? Right. That
I think
there's no accountability.
I think the school should be held responsible until the kids get back to get to another adult who can assume responsibility for them.
Okay, that makes absolute sense. So that could be at home, or it could if they had to go to their parents' work or whatever, see the babysitter. That makes a lot of sense. Efficiency. But so I want to tell a little story that happened in high school, and I kind of shared this with you. I was in the locker room. It was after gym was over, and I had dyspraxia really bad, so I was the last pick kid for everything, and pretty much everybody hated me, including the gym teacher, because he was one of those macho studly types, real sporty types, which is appropriate for a gym teacher. Don't get me wrong, but not the as far as he took it, because he thought he was macho and would try to show off to the girls and everything else. So that really gave me a distaste for him because of how he treated the girls, like almost flirting, So anyway, I was getting dressed out. I was in my locker. I put my pants or shirt or whatever on the bench and reached down in the locker to get something. Turn around. There is a kid standing up there, and my face touched his junk. Mm-hmm. And he did that on purpose. He jumped up there so I would turn around and bump up into him. And so he just started screaming and hollering and laughing and everything else. Now, I don't think anybody else saw it or anything. And for whatever reason, nobody latched on to that. But the thing is I knew that that was bad. Like,
Yeah.
bad. And there was no way in hell I would have reported it because I was terrified of the adults. And that should never, ever be the case. I was sexually assaulted.
Yeah.
Flat out.
That reminds me of a situation that happened to me my freshman year of high school. In the locker room, just like you, getting changed. And a senior comes walking over, his hands down in front of him. I didn't realize it. And he goes, hey, you want some gumballs? And naturally, my eyes go towards the movement.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he had his balls hanging out of his shorts. Apparently, that was funny or whatever. And there was another time when the PE coach, it was around the time when I was scheduled to fight that Vin Diesel looking guy. We were talking or whatever, and I had mentioned that I weigh about 200 pounds. And he grabs a hold of my pants at the belt line. His fingers are actually inside my pants. And he's like, where? Where's the 200 pounds? I didn't know how to feel about that at the time. I didn't know what to make of it. I thought it was kind of funny at first, but now years later, reflecting back on it, I kind of see it as almost a sexual assault.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if see anyone else. I would probably say that was a sexual assault if it happened to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
But from my perspective, thinking back on it, I'm not really sure if it was or not. You know, and this PE coach, he ended up getting fired at the end of the school year for flirting with the female students and stuff. He was young on the younger side, probably only had an associate's degree or maybe a bachelor's degree, but he wasn't much older than us. But we all knew why he got fired and everything is for sexual harassment on female students. But yeah, both of those instances, looking back on them, if that happened to somebody else, I would definitely say it was sexual harassment, at the least. But having experienced it myself, I'm not really sure what to make of it.
I think
And I think,
a lot of times when we look at ourselves, like, um, when that happened to me, frankly, it didn't affect me. Not what he did because I knew he was a freaking dumbass, just being a stupid dumbass kid. I knew that.
mm,
But the fact is, it devastated me because I knew I couldn't report it or say anything or do anything to make it stop. And it didn't happen again, thank goodness. But it was the fact that I did not trust the people who were there who were supposed to be protecting me. And
yeah,
I figured if I said anything, then it would get around the school, and then I would be called all kinds of gay names or whatever you want to call
oh
it.
yeah,
And
absolutely,
and so I knew the consequences of reporting it were far out more. And think of, I'm a man. Think of how many times this happens to ladies
hmm
throughout their lives. You know, And this was just a little thing that it gets much more serious with girls, and you imagine autistic girls, how much they're
Yeah.
taken advantage of, and there are that people are predators, particularly towards women. Hey, Trev, I was almost going to give you a call.
Yeah.
So let's talk about prevention a little bit. Um, what comes to, as kids grow up or whatever else, there's always going to be that element of kids that are disturbed in one way or another and that need to bully. And I will say the bullies are disturbed, and I'm not, you know, to do that, there has to be something going on with them.
Yeah.
They've got some major issues going on themselves and so in a sense, I know that they are more than likely victims themselves of some sort of other abuse or whatever. More than likely. Usually that stuff doesn't come from nowhere. It can, but to me, it's not an individual. Let's get this kid. Let's get that kid. Let's get that kid. Let's put this bully in jail. Let's put this bully in jail. No, first of all, I'm thinking when there's a bully identified, then I don't see any reason why there couldn't be psychological evaluations. I am not talking about taking kids to institutions or anything like that, but hopefully providing them with the care that they need.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be the first priority. Now, and the other thing is the culture of because the kid's autistic and different, or maybe just weird because we don't know they're autistic like me. I was just weird. I wasn't autistic back then.
Same with me.
I was weird. Or I did get called the R word a lot, and it was really sad about that. I thought, I literally thought everybody got called that all the time. And so when they said it, it didn't mean anything. It,
That and a lot of back when we were growing up, a lot of autistics were also called the F word
mm-hmm,
because of the T Rex arms. Back when we were growing up,
mm-hmm,
this
mm-hmm,
was yeah,
mm-hmm,
this was seen as a sign of being homosexual,
mm-hmm.
and
I
I
got,
can't tell you how many times I got made fun of for that, and all the things I got made fun of, I basically masked in myself to the extent where I now know why been so hard for me to receive a diagnosis or to be seen as autistic because I'm overcompensating and it's kind of been hammered into me, you know?
see this right here?
Mm-hmm.
That's practice. Because this is messed up. I literally practice how to hold my hands because I just and now I still do it, but I would literally practice like and it was ended up like looking like a fist or whatever because I was trying not to T-Rex, and it's sad now that you mention it because I was definitely called all kinds of things, gay and everything else, and that was a big insult back then.
Yeah.
Now it's not really, which is
I,
cool.
I practiced how walking, not like the act of walking, but my appearance when I'm walking. Like, you have the ADHD hump type thing where your
hmm
head goes first. I don't know if I'm ADHD or not, but all my life I've always had that. And anytime I've passed by a reflective surface in school halls or wherever, I would always look to check and see if I was doing that. And if I was, I'd straighten myself up so that people didn't look negatively on me for the way I was walking.
It's called T-Rex hands. I'm going to call you Ninja because I don't know how to say your name. T-Rex hands. That's looking back at my childhood. My mom was trying to prepare me. Now I see that she was autistic too. Oh yeah, my mother, she's passed now. Ninja works.
I did the same thing with my oldest child, and it caused me to be quite toxic. It wasn't until I realized my own neurodivergence that I realized that I was so busy fighting monsters, I didn't see the monster I'd become.
What do you mean? I don't understand.
Well, I tried to make my oldest be a certain way so that they wouldn't get made fun of at school, so they wouldn't be called out by teachers or looked down on or ridiculed or anything. Um, I was so busy trying to protect them from being bullied, I didn't see that I was actually bullying them too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying them because my oldest is trans,
Mm-hmm.
non-binary now, um, born female. I'm still trying to get the hang of it, and it still kind of slips out. Um, we don't really have a relationship now, and that's because of a lot of it has to do with how toxic I was when they were growing up, um, because I didn't want them to have the same life as me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but also, a lot of it has to do with um, things that they were doing as well, not necessarily like stealing, lying, hoarding, which could be seen as autistic traits to the extent that they were doing it, but I didn't realize it at the time, and it all always felt like an attack on me and my wife.
Mm.
Um, and we were at the end of our rope a lot. Um, if you look up reactive attachment disorder
Mm-hmm.
online, all those symptoms are symptoms that my oldest exhibited.
Mm.
Um, and looking back, I wonder if they were autistic also.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we ultimately came to the conclusion that they were rad because um, they were taken from their birth mother uh, when they were 3 years old and given to me
Mm.
um, because birth mother would reverse their doorknob so she could lock them in their bedroom when they were a toddler. Just tons of trash, leave them alone for hours on end, and everything. Um, and so that's ultimately why we came to the rad conclusion. But now thinking back, I almost wonder if there might be some autism also. But
I'm sure they can be comorbid.
oh yeah,
I'm sure.
but there's not any research on that because most of the times researchers look at one thing and one type of person for these different things, and there's so little research on female autistics or lower middle class autistics. There's even very little research on reactive attachment disorder in general, which is to answer Ninja's question there. What's the disorder? It's reactive attachment disorder.
RAD. RAD.
It
Yeah, go ahead.
it's basically um, the best way to explain it is it's artificial autism because you're not born with it. You are born with the predisposition for it, depending on um, the first 3 years of your life, um, how you're raised, the attachments that you receive, um, and then uh, it develops, which is why a lot of times two people from the same family, the same household, one can develop reactive attachment disorder, the other doesn't,
I
even
was
though they experience the same things, because one is predispositioned to it.
I just saw a video just hours ago. A fellow was talking about when kids are born that there's been a bunch of scientific studies about skin to skin contact, not through clothing, but skin to skin specifically.
Kangaroo care.
Kangaroo care.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that a little bit?
That is basically once the baby's born, they recommend that um, they receive skin to skin contact so that they can feel the heartbeat of the caregiver. They can feel the warmth, um, basically like what happens in nature. Um, several several decades ago, a researcher by the name of Bo Bowlby did a study on an infant monkey, um, where he studied attachment. He had two artificial caregivers in a cage. One was wrapped in a towel, the other was wire and had a bottle for it. The monkey would spend more time with the towel caregiver because of the softness
Mm-hmm.
and warmth it received from it, and then run to the wired one just for food, and then run back to the towel one for the comfort.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what kangaroo care provides. Is it provides that closeness, that warmth that an infant needs, um, and any caregiver can do it. There was a recent episode, I want to say earlier this season or maybe last season, of The Good Doctor, which is notorious for having a not really realistic interpretation of autism on there. But there was a character who performed kangaroo care on this newborn, and it was the doctor that performed kangaroo care on the newborn. And whenever she couldn't do it, other members of this medical staff performed kangaroo care on this newborn, and it helped the newborn to survive
Oh wow.
because the newborn was very sickly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the mother had died during childbirth and everything, and because of that attachment that they were able to develop, um, they actually survived. And the doctor ended up going on and adopting the infant and everything. Um, but yeah, it's if you look up kangaroo care online, it goes into all the specifics on it, and that was one of the things they taught us whenever my son and daughter were born, my two younger ones. Um, and one of the things they taught us in child development class and human development class was about kangaroo care. I did a video on it here on TikTok. It was um, I was stitching another video where someone was saying that this person who was doing that was trying to breastfeed the child, even though they had no milk glands and stuff because they were trans or whatever. Um, but I could see right away that wasn't what they were doing. They were performing kangaroo care.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So one thing about the bullying that I've noticed that when it is addressed, the big problem I have is, and the problem I've always had with the whole bullying advocacy is it's focused on the bullies.
yeah,
It tends to be focused on the bullies, and to me, the bullies are the teachers, the faculty, the parents, the whatever. The true bullies are those that are enabling it and allowing it to happen.
yeah. And a lot of it is socially focused, like with restorative justice. Um, I was trained in restorative justice in college for my minor in criminal justice. Um, how much about restorative justice do you know about?
I may know a lot about it, but I don't know the term.
It's also called restorative practices. Basically, you bring in the person who wronged um, another person.
Mm-hmm.
You meet with them, you talk with them, you try to get to the bottom of everything. You meet with the other person. Um, Eventually, you bring them together in a circle, along with all the teachers and students um, who were affected by this, and you go around the room You express how they negatively impacted you, and then um, you go around and express how you're willing to help them going forward. And then the person who wronged or who did the wronging and the person who was wronged um, supposed to come together and basically hug it out, and get to a point of trust and all this. Um, it's very widely promoted in schools, in the criminal justice system now, by politicians and everything. It doesn't work. It's not effective because
Is it that a lot of like what that guy, what the principal was trying with me with the hold hands with the
yeah,
guy who beat me up?
yeah,
So that was a very bad interpretation of something that didn't work.
yeah. It's not effective for a lot of reasons. The biggest reason though is because the person has to want to change.
Mm-hmm.
They can say all these things and follow through with the process and everything, and it's not going to work because they don't want it to work. They don't want to change. They're going to do what they have to get through the process and get back to that position where they were before so that they can do it all over again.
I think what happened with me was I didn't have trouble with one kid by any means. And I don't think any autistic person had trouble with just one kid. It's many kids. So as that happens, the autistic, or we'll say victim, I don't know, tends to be perceived as the problem. And what ends up happening is, I think I've been trying to, it's not a person problem, it's a system, a cultural problem.
Something I've found as a substitute teacher um, is that there was this one student who was having problems with bullying, and they came to my class. They looked upset, and I asked them what was wrong, and they said that they were sick of the bullying, and I asked them who's getting bullied, and they told me they were, and I was like, well, have you told anyone about it? And they said, yeah, I've told all the teachers, and no one's doing anything about it. Well, after class was lunch period, and in the teachers' lounge, I asked the other teachers, "Hey, what do you guys do about bullies in this school?" And they're like, "Well, who's getting bullied?" When I told them, it was like almost simultaneously, everyone's eyes just rolled, and they're like, "Well, they bring a lot of that on themselves." Basically echoing my 5th grade psych eval. And they were going on about how this student has gone to every teacher and asking for the other student to get pulled out of class so that they can confront them and all this. I'm like, what's wrong with that? This person needs closure. This person needs to find out why they're being bullied. Mm-hmm. It's not like they're asking the other student to be pulled out of class so they can beat them up.
Mm-hmm.
They want to know what's causing it. And then when I subbed for PE, a week or so later, this student was getting bullied again, and they mentioned it to the other teacher who was with me, coaching the PE class, and the teacher was just like, you know what, I'm done with this. Go to the if you're having a problem, go to the principal, because I'm hearing one thing from you. I'm hearing something completely different from the others. So I'm done with it. Just go to the principal. Let the principal know. And I couldn't really do anything because I was just sub, and this other teacher was a permanent teacher, and it felt like if I were to overstep in that moment, then it wouldn't actually help the student.
Mm-hmm.
Because then I would be put on the other teacher's shit lists, and I couldn't really advocate for them.
And you're not there all the time to
No,
advocate.
no. And a lot of times when you have groups of students, they will all agree on one thing
Mm-hmm.
that completely goes against what you said.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a teacher and you hear the same story coming from multiple people and then a different story coming from one person, which story are you going to believe?
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of it has to do with teachers need to get to know their students, get to understand and be more observant of their students.
And that's interesting. I never leave the group. I always take into account accountability, groupthink, and herd mentality. I just always have, and I think it's because I'm autistic. But one thing that you said there really struck me, and you said that they're bringing it on themselves. And the bad thing about that is they were completely correct. We do bring it on ourselves. The problem is it's not intentional, and we don't know that we're doing it. It's because we're there.
Yeah.
And,
And it's because we're just being who we are. We look for this sense of justice that we're not receiving, and we kind of tend to go overboard with it at
oh,
times, seeking that sense of justice, wanting somebody to listen to us, somebody to be on our side. And so then it causes other people to turn on us, and it causes the ones who were originally against us to make it worse.
unfortunately, it led me to violence.
Mm.
Eventually, I don't know why I never got in trouble for this. Now, I'm going to say something, and this might upset some people, but um, I've heard it called with the T word, strength. Um, there's
Yeah.
certain times where neurodivergence, that if we get extremely upset and that adrenaline hits, we get strength. We get strong, a lot stronger than what we're supposed to be. And I was a farm boy. So I didn't know how to fight, but I was used to picking up, 60, 80 pound bags. And this was when I was 12. Now, it was hard to handle, don't get me wrong, but I could pick them up and I could throw them. Well, when it came to a 40-pound kid, it was easy for me to pick them up and throw them. So that's what I do because I didn't know how to fight. But when you can pick up somebody and throw them about 6 feet away, it's impressive to everyone.
That's why a lot of times I held back in fighting. I constantly had to be aware of what I was doing whenever I would get into a fight, because I was afraid of losing control and ending up in prison. There was a time when, and I talked about this in a story on my TikTok. This one kid, he was a friend of mine. He ended up making out with my brother's girlfriend at the time, and it pissed me off. It pissed my brother off too, but apparently not to the same extent as it pissed me off, which was kind of weird. And looking out for my brother,
The loyalty.
yeah. I told this guy not to come around me anymore and stay away. And one day, he came over to my house to hang out with my brother, of all people. And my brother let him in, and I come out of my room, and I told this guy to leave. He wouldn't leave. I said, okay, here are your two options. You can either leave on your own, or I'm going to throw you out. He wouldn't leave. He sat right down in the chair. I went over to the door, opened it up, grabbed him by his coat that he was wearing, and threw him out the door. And
you mean literally through?
Yeah. He comes rushing me back through the door, about to jump on me. I take him down to the ground. I have him in a chokehold. I don't really, by this point, I'm just kind of seeing nothing but red. My rage has taken over. Mm-hmm. I don't realize that the hood has been pulled down over his face, and it's trapped in my arm where I've got him in the chokehold. And all these other kids are in my house trying to pulling on me, telling me to let him go,
Couldn't hear him. My bad.
and I don't realize what's going on. And then finally, I come to, and I just kind of push him aside, and I just kind of almost fall back, you know. And when he pulls the hood off of his face is blue, his lips are purple, the inside of his mouth is purple. I could have killed this kid.
Mm-hmm.
And it scared the shit out of me. I locked myself in the bathroom. And I just sat there on the bathroom floor like this, rocking.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm laughing because it's hitting home so much.
yeah,
I remember when I threw these kids that as soon as they hit the ground, I realized what I did, and I would run. And the reason I was running wasn't because I was afraid of the kid.
mm-hmm.
It was because I was terrified of what I had just done.
Have you ever seen the movie Perks of Being a Wallflower?
No.
There's a scene, and it doesn't come across in the book because I read the book, I listened to the audiobook of it, and then I watched the movie. It doesn't really come across in the book, but in the movie, it comes across perfectly. There's a scene where these jocks are picking on this one guy who's homosexual, and his friend, the main character, he's kind of been rejected by the group for speaking his feelings about this girl who's supposed to be his best friend and everything. And he sees these jocks picking on his friend, and it shows him going over and grabbing one of the jocks, and then next thing it shows all the jocks on the ground with bloody noses and everything, and him just standing there with his fist clenched. That's exactly what this is. And watching that movie, it's revealed that he is the way he is because of something traumatic that happened to him involving his aunt when he was little. But watching this movie and listening to the audiobook, it really feels like the main character could have been autistic as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if it weren't revealed of the trauma, I would say that he was probably autistic. But
Interesting.
I highly recommend that movie and the book. The book's even better, but there are things that the movie shows that don't really come across as well in the book.
So the only thing that I can see is a culture change among adults, among faculty, and so forth. And that's some of the things that really truly need to be addressed, like the group think thing that you were talking about. That yes, groups of kids will lie, and that's what really pissed me off too when I was a kid, because I knew that, and I was like, why are you playing stupid? That's what pissed me off, was that when they're like, well, we can't prove anything, or it's just your word against his. This has been going on for 3 freaking years. My word against it. Are you freaking kidding me? You know, and it literally, to me, the adults were playing games with me, literally playing games, and that's what made me resent them. And to this day, you can see I'm getting a little worked up, you know.
The adults, even though they don't admit it, adults, specifically teachers, they want to be in the it crowd just as much as students do. Teachers want to be accepted by the popular students just as much as other students do. So naturally, they're going to side with the most popular students.
I never had thought about that. I never had thought of it. And it's because it's a natural human thing. It's not that they're screwed up or stupid or mean or.
And they may not be doing it consciously either. It's likely subconscious.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
A lot of teachers were among the popular groups in school. They were they were part of the popular crowds, so they want to continue connecting with those kids that they would have been when they were in school.
Ninja there has a question.
Um, not
Because
really.
they don't want to be bullied, the teachers, that is, by the students. That's
No, it's not about bullying for the teachers. It's more about we tend to navigate closest to those that we relate to. So if we were popular in school, we're naturally going to navigate as teachers to popular students. They're going to be our teachers' pets. If we were bullied in school, we're this could go one of two ways. We're either going to navigate towards the bullied students and believe them and stick up for them, or we're going to navigate to the popular students wanting to feel that acceptance that we didn't experience when we were in school.
okay. I got you. It's a real human factor then.
Mm-hmm.
It's what we're talking about, and so I think if these human factors were literally addressed in schools, the tendency to believe the groups, the tendency to think that the we'll just say kid um, goes all over the school and is inciting it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a mindset,
Right.
and I think that mindset needs to be tackled. Definitely and just with what we've said here, would be just enough to cover to help them to get the idea. Now, because most people are neurotypical, I don't know how to make it really sink in.
Yeah. The problem is the neurotypical teachers, the neurotypical admins who they see things a certain way. They believe that if you just ignore the kids who are bullying you, they'll go away.
Mm-mm.
That's not how it works.
It
They
encourages them.
Yeah, they believe that if you just act a certain way, all your problems will disappear.
Yeah.
Essentially promoting ABA in schools.
Right. It's masking. If you don't act the way that we want you to, you're not acting like the other kids. Therefore, you're a problem.
Exactly.
And I understand that. Um, but and this is not bashing on neurotypicals, but autistics do get this because we experience this, and probably a lot of disabled kids, whether they're autistic or not. Um, so neurotypicals don't ever have that same type of experience, although they may have been bullied at some point in time. It is not the same thing, and it's
Right.
if they've experienced 1%, we've experienced 100%. Um,
Exactly.
and so they don't realize how devastating.
And real quick, I'm gonna let you know it's 2:53 my time.
Okay.
I can probably stay until about 3:15.
Okay.
So
Okay. So yeah, there was just 2 weeks ago. I follow the news and autistic news and so forth. Now, kids being bullied and so forth, kids wandering off, you see constantly. But there was a 10-year-old boy. Now, I don't know that this kid was autistic. I'm guessing he was. I'm just going to take a wild guess he was, just out of hand. But nonetheless, a 10-year-old boy that took his own life last week. A 10-year-old boy. I'm sorry that's upset me. I mean,
there were so many times in school when I thought about doing that to myself, and there were times when I thought about doing it to others.
mm-hmm.
That's why I can. When there is a school shooting, I don't immediately go and say, shame on this person for doing that. Was what they did a horrible thing? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But what got them to the point where they felt like that they had no other choice than to do it? You know,
And once
what,
again, it
what
always
did they
focuses
experience?
on the one kid or whatever and how horrible they are, how messed up they were. And like you said, I have never heard once an extended story about how the kids were bullied and what was going on in their lives.
Yeah,
Um, it's just
and
this.
there are these sites that do research, um, and say that there's the number of school shooters out there who were bullied is very minimal. Um, that's not that's not reality though.
I don't buy that for a
You
minute.
can't always believe those who survived,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of times they're gonna want to be seen as the victims,
Mm-hmm.
just like in bullying situations. The bullies are gonna want to be seen as the victims to get you on their side.
Well, my son was not bullied at all, which is complete bullshit because I never saw it. And he finally told me about it later on in when basically when he got out of school. But he was bullied pretty severely, particularly in middle school. Now, what he ended up doing somehow, thank goodness, he had a wonderful sense of humor. And so when they go, "Well, you're gay," he'd be like, "Dude, shh," you know, and he'd make a joke out of it or something. And eventually, it got to the point that he was cracking them up so much that they started liking him because he was just a clown. Um, but the thing is not all people have that gift,
No.
you know. And he was autistic, but he had that ability to make people laugh and to turn around a situation, which is particularly unusual for autistics. But how many autistic comedians do we have? If you think about it, there are a lot of autistic comedians, really. Um,
And in school, I always wanted to be that person. I always tried to be, but it would always backfire on me.
I'd say something stupid instead. Everybody's
Or I
like, "What?"
or I'd stutter about it with a retort, or they kind of dig into it. Where if I were to say something like what your son said, like, shh, they would latch onto that and just dig even further.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was really no winning. So there were a lot of times when I thought about, you know, taking my own life in school.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of times when I wanted to go over to my grandpa's house. He lived on the farm across the yard from us. We two houses on the farm, and get into his cabinet and take one of his um, things to school with me,
Mm-hmm.
and just empty the clip, because of how severely I was bullied. The only reason I didn't was because my great grandma was my favorite person, and
Mm-hmm.
I always wanted to make her proud of me. She was the one who was always there for me no matter what, who always believed in me. She was at all my school performances. She was there anytime there was grandparents day at school. Um, she always believed me over everyone else, no matter what I did. She was my favorite person. And she passed away when I was in fourth grade. And that fourth grade is also about the time I stopped caring in school because of a certain teacher I had, who was also bullying me. I've told these stories on my TikTok as well about this teacher.
Mm.
But I always wanted to make my great grandma proud of me. I didn't want to do anything that would make her stop being proud of me, even in death.
Mm-hmm.
You know. And so anytime I got that thought of just going over to my grandparents' house while they were on vacation or whatever, and getting into my grandpa's cabinet, and taken one of his pieces, I would think about my great grandma, and I would think about, would my great grandma be ashamed of me if I did this? And that would stop me. That would always stop me. And
I'll tell you what. I'm just going to throw this out there. I'm going to speak for your great grandmother, and I am out of place, but I think she would be extremely proud of you right now.
this was my great grandma.
I think she would be extremely proud of you right now.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But my mom also used to use that as a weapon against me too. Like, if I did something she didn't agree with as an adult or
Mm-hmm.
even a teenager, if I expressed my non-Christian beliefs or around her or on MySpace or whatever, she would say, "Oh, wouldn't great grandma be proud?"
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
Um,
ouch,
yeah.
ouch.
And so it was often used to weaponize against me. But a lot of times I would think about it myself. Anytime I wanted to, when I got to that point to where I was almost at rock bottom, where I didn't care anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and I would think about um, how my great grandma would feel about it, and that would stop me. But a lot of these kids, they don't have somebody like that in their life. They don't have somebody that they would think about and want to be proud of them. Um, so it's no wonder why they do the things they do.
Mm-hmm. And for me, I literally, I mean, I didn't literally want to hurt anybody. I wanted it to stop, and I was willing to lash out and do anything, any, any, anything, just to make it stop. And that's the thing, did I want to beat up the bullies? Yes, but it wasn't. It wasn't because I wished them harm. I wanted them to stop.
Yeah, exactly. And that
And
was why those thoughts went through my mind, was because it wasn't that I wanted to actually remove them from this plane of existence.
mm-hmm,
It was because I wanted the torment to stop.
mm-hmm. And you get to the point where you're just willing to do anything.
Yeah.
And that's what gets really scary. I remember being very, very scared of myself. I remember not calling in sick, but being sick and stuff because I didn't want to deal with it. I in junior high I was sick all the time, boy. And the thing is it literally I was doing it to avoid school, but I was getting physically sick too.
And that's one of the things about bullying is, because it is trauma for the victim,
Mm-hmm.
it can have a physical impact. I did a research presentation just this past quarter on bullying, and a lot of the symptoms caused by it. Let me bring it up here. The long-term effects of bullying: um, feeling tired, poor appetite, stomach ache, sleeping difficulties, headache, back pain, dizziness, mental health outcomes, depression, anxiety, psychotic symptoms, self harm, suicidal ideation, and suicidal behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Wait a minute, is that a checklist?
Something like that. And most of these are experienced by the victim. Some of them, like suicidal behavior, suicidal ideation, anxiety, and depression, are also experienced by the bully.
Mm-hmm.
But then also some of the long-term indirect effects are illicit substance misuse, alcohol misuse, smoking, panic disorder, loneliness, low self-esteem, hyperactivity, disturbed personality, social health outcomes, isolation, poor school adjustment, poor social adjustment, externalizing problems, risky sexual behavior, weapon carrying, and disconnectedness with parents. All of these are side effects from bullying.
One time, I was picking up my son at school, and I see him walking towards me, and all of a sudden, like a football player, this kid tackles my son. I jumped out of that vehicle and I grabbed that kid by his scruff, and because my son had told me that he had been picking on him, and so I was watching. Anyway, I picked that kid up by his scruff and dragged him over. They didn't drag him. I walked him over. I was a correctional officer at the time, so I could be intimidating as shit. But I took him over to the teacher or whatever, and they settled. But I called up the principal. I went into the principal and talked to him, and I says, "This kid has major, major psychological issues doing what this kid's doing." And I didn't even talk about punish. I was like, I don't want you to punish this kid. This kid needs help.
Mm-hmm.
Flat out, this kid needs major, major help. And thankfully, I don't know exactly what they did. Unfortunately, the kid I don't think, went to the school after that, but I went back to that principal and I said, "What happened to the kid?" And he's like, "I can't tell you." I was like, "Did the kid get care? Did he take something?" And he assured me that the kid did. And that was my solution right there, was addressing the bully. Um,
And I'll tell you,
and I didn't demonize the kid. I
right?
I empathized with him.
I'll tell you, I ran into my worst bully on MySpace back in the day. Um, Long after I uh, been out of high school and everything. I hadn't seen him since I switched school districts, really. Um, and I came across his MySpace profile, and I was like, what the hell? Maybe he's changed. Sent him a friend request. He accepted it, and he sent a message right back, profusely apologizing for how he treated me in school, taking accountability for what he did, not placing the
Wow.
blame on anyone else or anything. And I invited him over to my house and we talked. He actually offered to let me punch him in the face. I didn't take him up on it, but we became really good friends after that. So much
Mhm.
so that I invited him to my wedding. He invited me to his wedding. We don't really talk too often now. Occasionally, I'll get a message from him on Facebook or whatever. But uh, anytime I've invited him over, whether it be for a cookout, a party, since that point, or just to work out, you know, um, he's always come. And when he was going through issues with his oldest child's mom, her wanting to keep I guess they're non-binary now or whatever, um, keeping the child away from him and everything. Uh, he asked me if I would go to court with him, and I accepted. I went to court with him. It wasn't that I would have to say anything in court. It was just more for support.
Mhm.
Um, I sat there in the lobby with him. I could tell he was stressed out and anxiety ridden, um, afraid that he was going to lose his kid, not be able to see them again, And I talked him down off that ledge.
Mhm.
I just told him, as we were sitting there in this empty lobby, I was like, close your eyes. He looked at me like confused for a minute, like, what do you mean close my eyes? I'm like, just trust me, do it. So he did, and I was like, imagine the last time, um, and I said daughter because at the time it was his daughter, um, gave you a hug and how it felt, and imagine she's doing that now. And he did, and it you could visibly see this tension just kind of fall off of him. And I went into court with him shortly after this. The case was called. I went into court with him. I sat right behind him in that courtroom, and just having someone there for him gave him the what he needed to actually fight, because he was prepared to just give in and just let her take away his rights because he didn't think he had a chance. But just having someone there with him gave him the strength to actually fight her. And because he was willing to go against her like that in the courtroom, she went out of there pissed off and told her attorney to drop the case.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
So did he ever give any explanation for what was going on when he was a kid? Was he having a hard time at home or anything? Or
He was bullied by his older siblings a little bit. He was also trying to fit in with socially at school, and I was an easy target. There wasn't anything more than that. We had been friends before the bullying, and he kind of, because I lived in the country and he lived in town, he got to hang out with the other kids more. And I guess there was some expressed dislike of me among them, and he kind of gave into that. And I forgave him. We became really good friends, but those in his group, I tried to forgive, but when they didn't take responsibility for their actions and admit what they did was wrong, when they told me that they didn't remember ever doing stuff like that, I couldn't let it go.
Right.
Yeah.
He sure did.
Yeah.
He sure did.
Because he took responsibility for his actions and owned up to what he did as being wrong, that I was able to forgive him.
That's cool. That's cool. We're about out of time. But are there any final thoughts or anything? Is you said about what about this time? Is that correct?
Yeah. About I have to go get dinner started shortly. My wife will be home soon. Don't write, if you're an adult now and you grew up being bullied, don't write off your bullies. If you haven't talked to them since being bullied, don't write them off, because you don't know what they were going through at the time. If they're willing to own up and take responsibility for what they did and apologize for it, accept their apology. And you don't necessarily have to develop a friendship for them, but try to develop mutual respect for one another.
You know the kid that I told you about that touched his junk to my mouth? I saw him when we were adults later. And, at the time I knew, I'm guessing the kid was ADHD or and I know he was ADHD, but he had a lot of other crap going on, and I knew that. I think everybody knew that. But I met him as an adult, and he was a really cool guy. He really was, and I'm so glad that he didn't get in trouble the way that he could have, because it could have maybe changed his life and possibly made him into a horrible person, if he ended up going through institutions and all that stuff. So the outcome did turn good and turn out okay. And it was a good outcome, actually, in the very end. But I really do agree with you there.
And if you're a kid and you're still going through bullying at school, don't give up. Don't let it have a negative outcome on who you are or your future. Try, keep trying to get the help you need. Keep trying. Keep keep seeking justice.
Hmm.
Keep seeking assurance, and hold on to that hope that someday things will get better, because
It will.
things will most likely get better. There's a higher probability that it'll get better than it'll get worse. And just don't give up.
Hmm. I think that's a real good place. I think that's a perfect place to sign off. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. This was a wonderful, wonderful stream. It really was. I'm just ecstatic about this. It worked out really, really well. Perhaps we can come on and do this again sometime. I certainly would like to.
Sure. I'm getting ready to start back to classes, working on my master's right now. Um, we only got like literally a week of vacation time for summer break between quarters.
Hey, thank
Uh,
you, Alpha Devil, for putting that in the chat
yeah,
there.
thank you.
I appreciate that.
Um, the way Northwestern works is we do our homework and our lectures a week before the actual uh, live class session. So even though technically I'm still on summer break, I've got homework that's due before our first class on Tuesday
Oh,
next.
geez.
So yeah, I was trying to work on that before we started this. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that's probably what I'm going to get back to while I'm cooking dinners.
All righty. Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime.
All righty. Well, I'm gonna sign off here then.
All right. Have a good one.
Hey, you too.